So put very simply, just like buying and selling businesses. So it's a merger when the two businesses are relatively the same size and they come together to form one business. Acquisition when one is clearly larger than the other and they acquire that business and bring it in. So quite simple. It's like there's also M&A activity as like first transaction. So when it's not two businesses, it could be like an individual wanting to buy a business or some kind of entity set up for their first acquisition. So something that's quite new that's come out recently in Australia is more of a search fund, which is where you raise capital to buy a business. Like instead of raising capital to start a business, you go out and find a business that is suitable for cash flow and we'll use that capital to buy a business. So just thought I'd give that information because that's what everything's kind of about. Cool.
Very helpful.
I just thought if I got like halfway through the presentation and then you didn't know what it was, I'd have to restart. So before I get into what I actually do, I'll just give a bit of background of where I've come from. So I won't go too far back, but when I went to uni, I went to University of New England, which is up in Armidale. So it's kind of like a similar uni to, from what I've seen, quite similar to University of Newcastle. It's got a really strong presence online, it's really well known, but it's relatively small comparative to your University of Sydney and those bigger universities. Most people at University of New England, they're doing an ag degree or a biz ag, kind of all those adjacent areas of agribusiness. Most of them will then go on to go back to the farm, or a lot of people that I was at uni with, they're essentially doing to go back to their family's farm or to go to their own farm afterwards. I, however, was looking to go to Sydney and wanted to be in finance. The reason I went into University of New England was just because I heard it was a fun university and thought that would be where I wanted to be. So no real thought process. I didn't really consider my career too much when I was early on. Like I just kind of wanted to get a degree and then figure out what I wanted to do afterwards. So when I was at uni, like I wanted to be in high finance. I wanted to be seen as successful and having this big career, but I didn't know what that was and I didn't understand how much preparation it takes to actually get into a role like that. I just kind of thought I'll get a distinction or high distinction average and then they'll give me the job. And unfortunately that's not the case. I think that I didn't have that wake up call while I was at uni because no one else that I was around had that ambition. They were all like had their own ambitions of going to their farm, and so no one was pushing hard to study and be proactive in actually learning how to land these kinds of jobs. So when I moved to Sydney, I took a role that felt like it was in the right direction, but still didn't really understand. I didn't even know what I was going to be doing. So I went into audit, which is just like reviewing financial statements, making sure they're all correct and stuff. So essentially every publicly listed company, they have a set of financial statements. Obviously, when they put those financial statements together, they can put whatever they want. And so someone needs to check that and make sure that it actually aligns with the rules and regulations. And that was my job. And so I didn't know that when I kind of took on the career. I knew that it was accounting focused, but I didn't really know exactly what it was. As I said, I wasn't that motivated, just kind of fell into that career. I was there for a couple of years. I could see the exit paths that most people were taking. They were into typical accounting roles at firms, and that didn't really interest me that much. Again, I wanted to be in like high energy finance roles. So after a couple of years, I made a move to a whole new firm, which is actually just EY and just 2 floors away from where I was. The team I moved into was called Financial Due Diligence or Transaction Services. So they work in M&A, but they do the accounting side of things. So it leveraged the skills that I built in audit, but put me closer to where I wanted to be with M&A. That move was extremely difficult. And back then it wasn't called EY Parthenon, it was just EY. So it was completely internal, but so difficult to do. Like couldn't find anyone who could tell me how to do it. There were no courses online that I found that could help me do that specific move. I was so desperate to make the move that I was 3 years in my career. I was wanting to take grad roles and they said I wasn't eligible. It was really difficult. And And eventually, after networking and meeting a lot of people in that team, I figured out what they knew and eventually made it happen. But it took a lot of effort. Then I went from EY into a company called Offload, a early stage startup. They were Series A when I joined, and they were looking to have an M&A inorganic growth strategy. So they were in freight. They were essentially a tech platform for freight, and they wanted to buy a whole lot of legacy businesses, like ones that didn't really have tech involved in their business, and they wanted to roll their tech out over the top and grow that way. Just kind of a quicker way to grow. So I made the move relatively quickly, about a year between those two. At Offload, led the M&A team. We went through 2 transactions, so bought 2 companies. We looked at hundreds more just to they didn't really fit, or we couldn't come to an agree on terms. We ended up closing 2 deals, and to give you a bit of perspective on how long deals take, a quick one is 6 months, a slow one can take years. So we got 2 done in about just a bit under 2 years. So that's a bit about my story, how I got to there. At that point, we had finished that second transaction. Offload was growing, but we were growing more through the acquisitions than we were organically. And so the CEO or the founder had concerns that investors would see it as not being able to grow organically. And so his thought process was we need to stop M&A for at least 12 months. And so my role at that point would stop being let's go find companies to buy, and it would be let's work with the companies we've got and improve those. I prefer the deal side of things. Like I don't mind doing the improvement side of things if I'm doing that on the side, and the main focus for me was finding new acquisitions. So at that point I considered what I wanted to do with my career from there. And at that point I tried a few things, but I tried to do a few things while I was still working at Offload. And I know that conventional wisdom is to make sure that you've got some traction with your business before you leave whatever your standard role is, so that you've got some kind of stability. And I couldn't do that. Like I would finish my day at Offload and I was completely drained. And the last thing I could do is to then put my energy and my creativity into building something from scratch. And so I tried that for a while, and it just wouldn't get anywhere. And I decided I just need to go at this 100%. And so I quit my job and started Prepped. What I quickly found was that I couldn't have done what I am doing now if I hadn't have done that. And I know that it's a big risk to do that, but I think a lot of what I do now is I post a lot on LinkedIn with my personal opinion, personal thoughts, and if I was tied to one company, they would be thinking about their reputation as I'm doing that, and it wouldn't allow me to do the sort of things that I'm doing. So I'm glad I did, but it was pretty scary at the time. Initially, I had no idea really what I wanted to do with this business. I just knew that there was still that pain point of how difficult it was to move from any career into M&A. There's a really strong pipeline of if you are a grad, you go through their grad program and you have a career there at Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, those big firms. Or you then, if you miss the boat there, then typically you go to companies like EY, mid-tier accounting firms, and do M&A there. That was a very clear path. The path, if you miss that boat, which you need to start that when you start uni, you need to get onto that very early. If you miss that boat, it was still very difficult to make the move. So I wanted to address that. My wisdom at the time was I need to start the very first problem they have, which is that when you are applying for roles, it's time consuming to apply for roles. At the time it still hasn't really moved that much, but through LinkedIn it's very quick to apply for roles, but outside of that it can be quite difficult to time consuming to change your resume for each job application and track each application you go through. So I built something that would track that. So you would apply for a role, you would take that role that you've applied for, put it in essentially what's a CRM, and then you could track the conversations that you're having with that along with the expected salary range, when you want to start, all that sort of stuff. My thought process was that I'd start at the beginning, this is the start of their journey in making the move, and then I would build out the rest of it later. The problem is that people who were using this, they didn't understand M&A, so they were never going to get the role. Like, it didn't matter if they applied for it or not, they weren't going to get it. And so, got a bit of traction in there. This was what I was building while I was still at Offload, so couldn't really get many people to sign up because no one knew who I was, no one knew about this. Like, yeah, it wasn't very easy to get it out. I think that's when I realised how difficult distribution is. Plus, there's a bunch of thousands of people who use as well. So from there, at the same time, I was working with people, individuals who were wanting to make a move, and I was just catching up with them every morning, 8 o'clock before work, and I'd catch up with them for an hour and just test them on something to do with M&A. So just tell them, next week I'm going to test you on revenue recognition, which is, I won't go into detail, but I give them some materials, they go study for a week, and then next week I basically ask them out and see if they would pass the test through an interview. That, people liked that, and I saw success from that. Like in the last cohort I did with the in-person training, every single one of them, which was only about 5, but every single one of them landed a role in M&A within 3 months. And it took me about 6 months, and I feel like I was really proactive in making the move. So to have all of them land a role in 3 months, I thought was a great success. The problem was that it was all in person. I could only deal with a few people that had to be there at that time. It was really unstructured, very time consuming. There was no way I could scale that business. But I knew that there was something there because they were having success in it where I really struggled before. And so I put it all online, and that took a tremendous amount of time. So I really hate myself being recorded. And so the only thing I hate more than being recorded is then watching that back and cutting it and getting it ready to put online. So these videos, like some of them 20-30 minutes, it would take me like 4 hours to put it together because I just didn't want to do it. But eventually got it all up there. And so I use a platform called Kajabi. It's a course hosting platform, really easy to use, and essentially they work through these different areas to go through the full end-to-end M&A process of how you go from I want to buy a business to here are the documents to sign to buy a business and all the things you need to do inside. So put that together, people work through that at their own pace. We have a community, it's now 160 people in the community who are all people who've come through the program. And then every week I'll have workshops, 30-minute workshops where either I just go on there and they ask me the questions they've got, or I'll bring on an M&A professional, whether it's someone who's sold a business or someone who's working in the industry, so you can understand more about the work they do and how they got to that position. So one of the recent workshops I had there, which was really interesting, was a guy called Frank Reef. He sold a business for 180 mil a couple of years ago, and we had him on and basically just hammered him with questions of what that was like, how he found the buyers, all that sort of stuff. Luckily, he had a YouTube video. I got everyone to watch that video beforehand, and then it was just 30 minutes of straight transaction talk. So that was really helpful. I don't actually know what slides next. Cool. So what I struggled with, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is just getting people to know what I do. Like at the start with the tracker, I had no idea how to get that out. I was just basically acting as a recruiter. There's a couple of roles that I was actively recruiting for, and anytime I had a call with someone, I would just look at this and try to get them to sign up. It was off the tracker, that is. And that was all free to use, so there was no real hesitation there. It's just that most of them really then use it, which is the struggle. The next thing I struggled with when I got to the online course is that, again, I couldn't get people to sign up. I was using what's called LinkedIn Recruiter. LinkedIn Recruiter lets you see who is actively looking for jobs, and I just reach out to them. LinkedIn Recruiter costs about $1,000 a month. It's really expensive, and I couldn't figure out a way to get into someone's inbox when they're desperately looking for a job, and then try and flip it into, hey, buy my product. It felt really salesy and really sleazy in doing that, because inevitably they would be like, hey, you know, I'm looking for a job, and if I say, oh, I got LinkedIn Recruiter, so I can see you looking for a job, so then I can make you pay me for this thing. So I didn't like that. So I had no brand presence, no one knew who I was, just one of the 1,000 people who come through EY every year. didn't have any success stories. So I had those people that were coming through, but there was a handful of them, and I couldn't really advertise that on LinkedIn. People don't like it being advertised if they've had help in landing a role. I think that's something I'm still struggling with there. It's like what I can and can't share in terms of success stories. And then no way to see if it's active aside from that LinkedIn Recruiter, which was incredibly expensive. So what I started to do was to get far more active on LinkedIn, and that was incredibly painful early on. Like, it's very cringe, it's still very cringe for me, but I just kind of thought, like, if I'm going to give this a full crack, and if this is my business to be for a lifetime, then it'd be a shame if it didn't become anything because I was too scared to post on LinkedIn. And so the first 6 months, or maybe less than 6 months, probably 3 or 4 months, nothing really happened. My mates would like it, and then we'd kind of laugh at it afterwards. So we'd send messages to each other saying that was pretty cringe. But nothing really happened, and it was at that point I was pretty close to giving up. Like, nothing had moved, I'd given it a fair shot. And then that post on the left there was actually, so it's 11 months ago from when I took that screenshot, which was like last week. That was the 3 days before my wedding, and I posted that, and then it got 7,500 comments. And so each one of those comments I had to send them an Excel model I built, which is something to do with M&A. So terrible timing. That was going off as I was standing at the end of the aisle. But that was kind of the shift I needed. Like, that's when everyone was commenting on that. They're either in the industry, want to be in the industry, and they're the people I want to connect with. And so I went from having like 2,000 followers on LinkedIn to I think like 7,000 or something like that, just from that one post, which was really helpful in kind of kickstarting things. And then there's been like some other ones here that have done well as well. I just kind of threw a few that I thought looked good up there. That one was random, also terrible timing on my honeymoon for that one there, and that got 3 million impressions. Just a story about Ryan Reynolds and how he built this business and how it's going well. So what I do with LinkedIn now is when someone will engage with my content, I will then reach out to them. I'll first look at their profile. If they fit the kind of profile that I think I can help with, I'll then send them a message, hey, you're just interested in this stuff, or are you actively wanting to make the move? And if they tell me they want to make a move, then we'll start a conversation about where they're at in that journey and if I can help them make that move. So, very simple process there. I tried using automation to handle those comments, to handle my inbox, all that sort of stuff. Inevitably, people see that they figure it out, it's EY, it's AY, and it doesn't work. Like, it looks really poor. I haven't found a solution that works for me and doesn't give that. And to me, it's not worth the reputation damage to do that. What's next? So at the moment, I've got the educational side of the business is relatively consistent. Like, I've got people coming in each week, they're working through the program, and they're landing roles at the end of it. So that side's going quite well. The broader picture of the business is that really the scale and where this becomes a business that I'm impressed with is when I can turn on the recruitment side. So for me, educating these people then gives me a pipeline of people who are ready to make the move into M&A that no one else can access because they don't know that they've got that skill set that I know that they do. And so then I can approach firms like EY and say, hey, I've got 10 people for that role you posted, I know they're good. You've seen the ones I've given you before, here you go. The problem I'm having at the moment is that M&A is really slow at the moment. So with high interest rates, it's incredibly expensive to buy a business. And so a lot of firms aren't using that as a strategy. And so the talent side of things, they're flooded with talent both here and internationally who already have mergers and acquisitions experience, and they're not going to look at talent that doesn't as often as the one that they do, and they're certainly not going to pay recruitment fees to do that. So that's what I'm struggling with at the moment. So I'm actually running a competition that I've been working with Nick a little bit to put this together as a bit of an experiment. So the way this competition works is anyone can join, it's free to join. I give them a mock transaction, they work through the details, and they give me a presentation a week later. So pretty much, I'm squeezing a transaction into a week, making it a bit more simple than how it actually play out, but testing their skill set. You don't have to be part of my program, you just have to have an interest in M&A and making a move and have that skill set to do it. So from that, I had 400 people on the wait list. I think in terms of actual registrations and people who fit what I'm looking for, there's probably going to be close to 100. What I'll do with that is they'll work through the transaction, I'll go through a couple of rounds, and then there'll be finals, and those finals will be in front of M&A firms. And so with those firms, I've now put in engagement agreements which replicate what a recruitment agreement looks like. So essentially my way to prove the talent is that they can go to this event and see how they actually perform without having to pay a cent. So it's free to come to this thing, and if you like the talent, you hire them, then you pay me a recruitment fee, which is similar to the standard recruitment fee. It's the way I'm trying to address the fact that they don't need recruiters at the moment, just by showing them, hey, here is what I can produce, like you've got access to them. It starts next week, so I don't know how it's going to play out, but the registration rates and the firms have been signing the engagement agreements and are going to come to the finals. Now the question for me is whether or not the talent is good enough for them to then hire them at the back end. But that's what I'm doing at the moment. That's this thing I'm struggling with is just the recruitment side of things. I think that's it, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. I'm also really glad that you mentioned Nick then, because I didn't know that he was working with you, but what I was going to say, Nick Stevens, to be honest, I know he's on the I2N team. I think probably at least once a week for the last 6 months, I've heard him mention one of your LinkedIn posts to somebody, and it wasn't until the other week that I realised I wasn't actually following you on LinkedIn, but we weren't connected.
I had added you too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I thought we were because of how much Nick shows me your posts. So yeah, he really loves your posts. So if anyone's not following Archie on LinkedIn, I would recommend it. They're very, very interesting. We do have a set of questions here that came through at registration from yourselves and people who couldn't make it today. And once we get through a few of these, we can hand over to the audience, because I'm sure after that presentation you all have a few questions that you'd like to ask. I even do, so I'd like to skip them.
Cool.
The first question is, what was the specific moment or experience that made you realise there was a gap in M&A training and career preparation? Like, I know you obviously gave an overview, but was there one particular moment that you can put it down to?
It's tough because like the moment was when I was going through it and I didn't realise that other people had that issue, like I just thought it was me. So I didn't realise, that was like, it's probably 2.5 years later that I actually did something about it. And there was no second trigger, it was just the role I was in was becoming something I didn't like, and that was kind of like an inflection point where I had to go back into it, something I do like, or I do something about the problem I saw. At that time, people were reaching out to me and like saying, hey, how did you make this move? But it wasn't like, huge influx of messages or anything. It's just kind of, I thought at that time, this is kind of the time to do my own business, and this is an idea I go after.
Okay, great. And the second question is from Shannon, and it says, how has Archie developed his products and tech stack to support the business?
Yeah, so I've tried a lot of different things, and I'm not technical at all. For the job track, I use a lot of no-code solutions and kind of tie them all together. So I think Airtable was the back end of it. The front end was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was pretty simply put together. What I do now, it's all run through Kajabi, like it pretty much does everything. It does my emailing, it does the actual course itself, the website, all of that within one platform. So I can track people who have filled out forms for like that Qantas thing. I can see when someone's filled that form out, when they've filled something else out. We can see all that within Kajabi, so I know that there's high intent there to join the program, or there's something else going on. The other tech that I use, like ChatGPT, multiple times a day. I'm always in there pretty much every hour I'm using it. Don't use Airtable anymore. Notion, bit of Notion, but it's like kind of standard tech, nothing's put together for the product itself, except for an AI called Lindy AI. And what that does for me is I give people in the program an assessment on a particular area of M&A, and they then submit their process I've got set up that an email address is only used to handle submissions for that particular question, and the AI will automatically reply with feedback and marking on that, and it's pretty good. It's consistent, and the feedback is, it feels like someone's typed it out. Like you can see it's AI because it's got the end dashes and stuff like that, but it actually reads like someone's written it out, and it kind of replicates the feedback you get when you're on the job. Like when you submit something to your manager to say, hey, this is ready to go out to a client, they're going to say, XYZ is wrong, can you please fix that up? And that's kind of like what this AI is doing, to try and replicate the experience they get within the job. So that's probably the coolest thing I use, but everything else is pretty straight.
That does sound really cool. Was it hard to kind of set it up?
Only because I'm not technical. Like I think like anyone who had any kind of technical side to them would be able to figure it out much quicker. I am in the process of using that to build out a full end-to-end deal advisor, so like they can come in, they can get all the details from like a business broker, and the business broker is an AI, and they're talking with the AI through emails, and then they take it to their manager, which is the same setup, through AI, and then they're taking it to their client through AI. And so I'm setting up these 3 different agents at the moment. Literally, the first time I actually put much time into it was yesterday. I put a couple of hours into it, so very early in that. But
so we expect something.
Yeah. Next time.
I really liked this question. It was from Mark, and it says, why did you choose a 4-week intensive format rather than a longer, more traditional course structure?
Yeah, I get that question all the time. The 4 weeks is something that's kind of a legacy from when it was in person. It was actually 4 weeks. Now it's not actually 4 weeks. It's all self-paced. You go through it at your own time. I've left the 4 weeks because inevitably when people sign up, they ask me how long it takes. And the answer is it takes as long as you want it to take, but people don't like that. So I tell them typically it takes people about 3 to 4 hours a week for 4 weeks to get through it. The reality is the more time you spend in there, the stronger the results will be. But yeah, it's just a way of indicating roughly how long it takes.
Yeah, okay, that does make sense. Yeah, I did see on your website that it did say self-paced and then 4 weeks, and I was like, what is it?
Yeah.
In my brain, I was like, I need one. That makes sense. The next question is from John, and it says, how do you ensure the quality of your employer introductions and maintain those relationships?
So I'm very careful on this, and this case competition kind of is helping me a bit on it, but as part of the program, I don't guarantee introductions. Like I help people where I can, but if they don't put in the work and I can see that they don't know what they need to know, I don't want introductions because it's bad for me, but it's also quite bad for them. Like they'll then burn the bridge, and there's not many roles in M&A, so you don't want to go around town meeting everyone in M&A and them all thinking you don't know anything. And so at the moment that AI actually really helps in that once it's graded their assessment, it then adds like their result to a G sheet for me, and I will see when people perform well in that, and then I'll go, okay, cool, you're like ready for introductions now, sort of thing. So that's how I manage that. It's very hands-on at the moment.
What about the relationships with like the firms and things like that? Do you find it difficult to kind of maintain those relationships in a position where you can make introductions, or have you ever had, I guess, an issue with an introduction that hasn't gone well and therefore it's like had a dent in your reputation or things like that? How do you manage that?
So I think because I don't have a recruitment model that's working at the moment, there's no resistance when I send candidates across, because it's a free punt for them. Like they just meet them and then see if they're good, and if they're good they hire them, they don't pay them. So it's like not hard to maintain that relationship at all, and I don't actively try to maintain relationships. Like I meet up with people when I'm in Sydney or Melbourne or wherever I am. I'll meet up with people who I've introduced their candidates to before, but really I let LinkedIn do the heavy lifting. Like if I'm active on there and posting all the time, then I'm still top of mind for them. So then when I send a message, it doesn't feel like I've not talked to them for a year. At least it's how I think it comes across. It feels like we've been connecting, and it's just like, hey, it's something you should meet. So I'm not very active on it, and that will change when the recruitment side of things starts to work.
Yeah, that's a great point anyway, to kind of like stay active on social media and things like that, so that it does feel like you've maintained that relationship. That's a great point. The next question is from Alex. It says, what have you seen / experienced working effectively at the intersection of M&A and AI? Could you provide some concrete actions?
Yeah, I've worked with Alex on a deal, so there's a bit of AI in there. Um, I think a lot is happening that's not public at the moment. Like I think the big firms are heavily using AI. I think they're using AI a lot and it's not out there, so I don't know what it actually looks like, but the Goldman Sachs CEO said that they use AI to do 95% of their IPO prospectus in, I think he said hours, and it used to take a team of 2 weeks to do it. And bankers get paid like a lot of money. Like it's even a graduate banker, 200k plus. So if you think about six people, 2 weeks, and they're not all grads versus an AI, that's a huge saving there. On top of that, I'm seeing AI in Australia. There's a company called Cross-Court AI that I think is relatively new that can handle building out presentations as well. I've seen that Claude can look at DCF models, so Excel spreadsheets, and figure out whether they're accurate or not. So I think there's a lot being done. The thing for me is I don't know whether it's being used in deals or not, because there's a lot of issues with confidentiality, and like when it's someone's business, it's all their information, their data and stuff, and I don't know if they can then take all that data and feed it into an AI, and who knows what happens with competition. So I don't know how active it's being used, but I know that it can do a lot of what the bankers do.
Great. That's very accurate, thank you. The next question is, how is the M&A talent landscape changing, do you think, and where do you see as the biggest opportunities?
So with my business, I'm like I've got two views of how things can go. Broadly, I think what's going to happen is that as these AIs that they're using become more effective and everyone becomes more comfortable with them using their data, or there's something that allows that to happen, the bottom rung of the ladder will fall away, and talent that are like in their first few years of their career won't have a job. So they won't be hiring grads anymore. And I don't think they'll, I don't know if there'll be full restructuring, but they definitely will lose their graduate program. And so they will then just have senior bankers that are running the deal, because I think there's always going to have to be that human element with negotiations and making sure that everyone's comfortable with what's happening. I think that will always exist, but I don't think the manual work that happens below that will need to be done by a person. And so where I'm at with my business is I think my business either doesn't exist, like there's no need for it in a few years, or it becomes incredibly, they become incredibly reliant on me getting people to that level of understanding that they can go straight into a senior level because they don't have that talent pipeline. I'm obviously leaning towards that, or I wouldn't still be in business. But I'm not sure, but it's one of those two things. The talent at the junior level won't be around for like in a few years' time.
Yeah. Does that make you, I guess, has there been a point where you've been building a business where you had to stop and really think about that and decide, whether to keep going, or are you just riding the wave along?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I think about it like pretty much every day I'm thinking, like, is there a point to doing this? Like it's, even though I feel like it's doing a lot better than it was doing, it's, as most people know, it's incredibly difficult to start a business. And to start a business going to a space where there's a 50-50 chance that everything you've done is worthless is tough. But I think the upside of if I get it right and I do it right and become that key link between the talent is worth taking a punt on, and everything I'm learning through that journey's been good. And I think the alternative for me is I either then go buy my own business, which is something I actually do think about, something that's very boring, manual, that can't be disrupted by AI. But I can't really go back into M&A. So if I believe that is true, that my business will fail and there won't be senior bankers, I don't think I have enough experience in doing deals to be the best senior bank, one of the best senior bankers in Australia. And so that means if I go back into M&A, I'm going to end up in the same position, if I think that's true. So for me, it only makes sense to either do this or my business. So this is the option I've chosen.
Yeah, great. How much fun?
I'm just curious to know, since you've started doing the LinkedIn, kind of organic what I'm trying to understand is it still white guys
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
get into M&A? It hasn't opened up an opportunity for...
So the funny thing is when I talk to the firms, they really want female representation in their firm, and I can't find it.
Yeah.
Like, even this competition, which is completely free, I'd say it's 90% plus male, if not like 100%. Like, I haven't actually gone through it, but I can see by the names that it's very much male dominant. And for me, like I'm all for equality as well, but I'm even incentivized to find more women to come through the program, and I can't do it. Like, there's just an underrepresentation of
So
people.
do you think that's a reflection on the types of students that are undertaking financial degrees at university, or just the nature of that type of work?
I think it's that type of work,
Yeah.
because in audit it was pretty 50-50, but then people want to make the move from audit into M&A, suddenly it's all males. And so I don't know whether it's like the view of it being Wolf of Wall Street style work, and maybe females don't want to do that, or if it's something else. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the degrees, because the degrees, audit's kind of cookie cutter finance degree, come out and you do audit. And so that's 50-50, so I don't think it's
So I had an idea while I was listening, but that led to the question, which is what I'm interested in. I was wondering about training on the supply side, right? The people doing deals who don't know what M&A people look at, and that whether that was an opportunity. My question is, how do you stay focused on the main game and look at incremental change rather than founders full of ideas, those shiny objects about how I could do this or how I could do that?
So for your first question, there are people that come through my program who are business owners or wanting to understand M&A. I tell them up front, don't do this program and then do a deal yourself, but do the program so that you can cut costs on your advisors and understand what they're doing and point them in the right direction. Like, my program's not going to get you to a level where you should be comfortable throwing millions of dollars behind buying a business without anything outside of the council. The second question on how do I avoid shiny objects is I'm terrible at that. Like, I love shiny objects. And so, like, I do always just try and do the new thing. And I think, like, part of that is I've always talked about businesses and how exciting things are, and never done anything about it. Now I feel like I should be doing all of them. They're all M&A focused, and I'm still quite early in the business, so like there's no saying that this is the right choice. And so when I get another option, I'm like, maybe that's the right choice. One thing that I've said no to that was really hard to say no to is I wanted to build a platform, which is still something I'm kind of in the background. I wanted to build a platform that would connect people who wanted to buy and sell a business with advisors, with the right advisor. So at the moment, when you find an advisor, it's because your mate has sold a business and you ask them which advisor they use to sell that business or to buy a business. And the mate who sold a cafe uses a different advisor than you need to sell your trucking company. Like, you should be using an advisor that is in that area, has the connections there, understands the industry, all that sort of stuff, and there's nothing that gives you that information. You basically have advisors pitch you that they know your business, and they're very good at pitching, whether they do or don't know the business. And so I wanted to be that third party that would connect that and verify that they actually do know the business based on past transactions. As you can see, I've thought about it a lot, but I'm not doing that anymore. And so that's like one example where I've got to say no. It's been very difficult to
Why?
say. Because I tried, like I did do it for a little bit while doing the course, and the course suffered a lot. And where I'm at the moment is the program I'm running is cash flowing, and this wouldn't cash flow even if I found a deal that was going to go through and I lined it up and everything worked. As I said, deals takes like 6 months plus, and so it'd be no cash flow for at least 6 months from the day I got onto work, and it takes time to get a deal lined up. So there's still companies I'm talking to that, they'll get in contact with me and say they're looking to sell their business. I'm still keeping active with them because it's very low touch, and then when that happens, I'll provide the right introduction for them. But I'm not actively looking for more work in that space for that reason. And to give like an indication of what an advisor gets paid, it's typically 3 to 5% of the transaction value. And so if you're looking at businesses that say $10 million, that is like a $300K fee. And so for one piece of work that takes a couple of weeks in a year, it's a big fee. So that's why it's such a shiny object, is that I can take a cut of that. But as I said, it's just I'm not in a position where I can take the long-term cut and pay.
You seem to be a really great case study for founders that have successfully leveraged LinkedIn in order to market their business organically. That's a really hard thing to do. I'm curious to know if you have any marketing or content strategy, which is the scary words, right? Background. Did you learn anything at uni? Did you have any corporate training? Did you do any courses to figure out how to post and what to post?
Yeah.
And if not, or if so, what advice do you have for other founders?
Yeah, I didn't. So I have done like a course in the past, which was helpful, but it was probably more helpful for me in like my strategy of, you know, reaching out with people after they've engaged with my content. At the time, I was literally just putting content out and nothing was happening. I wasn't doing anything about it. So it taught me like that thing, but it didn't teach me anything about the content I post. And I don't really have a strategy on the content I post. Kind of what I do is I read through M&A activity that's happened. I turn that into, so you've got the AFR and these big newspapers that give all the details of this, but it doesn't make any sense to anyone who's not in the industry. And so what I do is essentially try and make it so that any person can understand what's happening in that deal. And that's kind of been my strategy. So take whatever I think is interesting in the deal landscape, make it so that my mates can read it and post that on LinkedIn, and then see how it goes. And typically people who are liking it aren't, like a lot of them aren't in M&A and they still understand it. I have like thought about top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel, but I don't actively do it. I'll think about it and say this is kind of top of funnel sort of content, but there's no strategy where I go Monday is top of funnel, Tuesday is etc.
Do you have like set time? Like do you give yourself like an hour every day, or no? You just kind of you're just on there.
Yeah, and the way like the engagement I get, the level of impressions and all that sort of stuff doesn't give me any indication of how much time I should spend on something.
Yeah.
So I can spend a day on something and it gets no reach. I can spend 5 minutes on something and it gets millions of impressions. And so that's why I don't have a set time, because it doesn't matter. It's more about what it is putting up. So sometimes I'll be analysing a deal that I think is interesting, but I don't understand it enough, and I know it's going to take me a day to understand it, and I just don't have capacity for that, so I won't do it. But yeah, I don't have a set time. I do post at the same time every morning, like 7:45. My thought process there is people are on their way to work, they want to read something. That's the time I post. I haven't really tried much outside of that. And then some of those posts are doing quite well. They're the same template. Like I've just done the same thing, different company, and it has the same result. So if I see something that works, I'll just do a little tweak to it and then do something else. That's the one.
Probably have time for one more question. Thanks so much. Yeah, been great to listen to you. My question is kind of related and it's a work-related question. So I'm just wondering, all the gazillion things that you're doing on average, how many hours a week are you putting into it at the moment, and on average how much of that is just the marketing and the hustling?
I wish I could do more marketing. Like I don't have a budget for marketing. So everything I do is organic. And with the organic side of things, I'm not smart enough at TikTok and Instagram or YouTube to put time into that. I focus on one platform, which is LinkedIn. And LinkedIn only really works if you post once a day. You post a second time and both posts get handicapped, so it's not worth putting any time investment into the second one. And so I can only do so much marketing. I can only do that post and then message people. I wish I could do more. In terms of hours that I do, I don't have like a set schedule. I at least do the 9 to 5 every day, and then typically I'm in at least an hour or two earlier than that. I'll get home and I'll be on the couch messaging people as I'm watching TV. If I have a free weekend, I So I think my hours are probably like 50, 60 hours a week on average. So it's like I'm used to more hours. And I think that if I could do more marketing successfully, then I would be doing more hours. It's just everything that I'm doing at the moment, I'm like, I don't see the value in extra hours. I see that if I rest and recover, then my content will be better. And so that is better than putting an extra 10 hours trying to do something that's not going to be
Just like on average, maybe like a post a day and just wanting the comments would be an
What's the
hour.
split?
Just a bit.
Yeah, so content, probably an hour, put it together. Responding to messages is sporadic throughout the day based on whenever someone messages me. I should be more structured in that I should do it in the morning and then lunchtime and then after, like, so that I'm doing it all at once. But I think I get, if someone messages me, if I'm straight away responding back, I think I get a better response rate than waiting a couple hours. So that's sporadic, so I have no idea how long it takes. But it's not I would say an hour of content, an hour messaging, and then like the rest of it is like trying to figure out what to do next.
Thank you so much. That's all we have time for this morning. But can we all give a big just a quick little point. We do have another event this evening. It's our entrepreneur trivia. It's over at Bar on the Hill from 7:30. It's all about startups and business. You can win $200. And our next startup stories is on the 3rd of September, and it's by Store Beauty, Store Menzies. So